welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. You're watching Unbiased Magic Reviews, the most objective magic review channel here on YouTube. Today I'm reviewing Gabriel Werlen's Penguin Live lecture. As usual, I have no disclosures. Nobody sent this to me to review, and you can pick up this lecture for $40. You will get a lecture that's a little over 3 hours in duration, where you will watch Gabriel Werlen perform and explain 10 of his mentalism routines. Now, I'll tell you guys off the bat that this is probably the best mentalism lecture that I've ever seen from Penguin Magic. Undoubtedly, there is a little something for everyone here. There's close-up, strolling mentalism, stage mentalism. And even though you will probably not perform all of the routines on here, there's something that you can take away from every single one of these, either the principles, some of the psychology, or even the methods, and apply it to your mentalism that you are using. So this is really a real gem, this lecture. This is why I think that you guys are going to love this. And you guys have probably seen me make references to Gabriel Werlen and his book, The Green Neck System, because I have recommended it to people here on my channel. Now, the lecture was hosted by Eric Tate, and I think that he should have read the book before he hosted the lecture, because he looked totally lost. But he still did a good job anyway, even though he was really lost. But just as I'm saying, I would have read the book before hosting the lecture, but that's just me, just my thoughts, my observations of it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch on each of these routines, give you guys a good idea of what you can expect, my own thoughts about them, and then I will, of course, spend more time on those routines that I road tested and ones that I had more interest in, but I will try to touch on all of them so you guys have a really good idea of what you can expect here. Now, the last thing I'm going to say before I get into those is, difficulty-wise, I would say that everything on this lecture is really beginner level. I'm not saying that it's a beginner level to perform. You will really have to learn the script well and practice that, but there's no difficult moves and there's no difficult memorization for any of these routines. So you will learn them quickly, but to perform them well, you'll probably have to practice the pattern as well as just the method. That way you don't make any mistakes, so that way you can do it without thinking. You just do it like naturally, which is how we should be performing anyway. So let's start out with the first part of the lecture, where all the routines are based on the green neck system. Now, if you're not familiar with the green neck system, Gabriel Werlen did put out his book, The Green Neck System, which I do recommend you pick up. But to give you just a glimpse of what the green neck system is, this is based on Bob Hummer's Hummer principle, although it's like the next level of the Hummer principle, because Bob Hummer's principle, you needed to know the starting order of the objects to be able to do it. And here in the green neck system, what happened was that Gabriel Werlen added another step which enabled you to be able to perform the same type of effect, but you don't need to know the starting positions of the objects. And furthermore, there's also ways that you can force a certain position on the spectator. And so that's all taught in the book. So once you pick up the book and read it, all of this will make sense. But even if you don't, Gabriel Werlen does explain it well on the lecture, so you'll learn everything you need to know. So the first effect is called No Way, and it uses the green neck system, and it's very cleverly named No Way, even though it's K-N-O-W, right? And so this is a mentalism effect with playing cards. You're going to deal 10 cards face up. You're going to tell the spectator that you're going to turn your back, and you want them to swap cards 2 at a time and turn them over as you're swapping them. So you turn your back and they're going to swap all the cards 2 at a time, whichever ones they want to, and they're turning them face down while they do them. So when they're done doing that, you can tell the spectator that there's no way you could know where any of the cards are, because they literally have mixed them as they've turned them face down and swapped them. And now you tell them that you want them to turn any card that they want face up and to focus on it as a target. That will be the target card that you're going to try to get a sense of. and then you tell them to pick any other card and turn it face up, and that will be the bait card, or like the fake card. And then while your back is turned, you ask the spectator to tell you what the name of the bait card is, not the target, just the bait card. And then you tell them to turn those two cards face down, but swap them. So now you turn around for the first time, all the cards are face down, and you very quickly eliminate all the cards but the target card. And it seems utterly impossible, because it seems like you don't have enough information to be able to perform this. It seems like, how is that possible when they swapped all the cards any way that they wanted to? All they told you was the name of one card, and yet you're able to immediately identify the card that they're focusing on. This will probably be the effect that you run out to perform first, because it will take you less than 10 minutes to learn. It does use the green neck system. It's very logical. It's super easy to perform. It's really self-working, but very, very impressive. Your spectators will have no idea how it's possible. It looks like utter clairvoyance is what it looks like. So that's the first effect on the lecture. The second effect is called setting the table, and this was actually also in his book, The Green Neck System. And this was the routine that he uses to explain the green neck system, where you put out a fork, a knife, and a spoon. You turn your back and you tell a spectator to focus on one of those utensils. You have them switch some of the utensils, and then you tell them you're going to ask them which is their favorite utensil, but you tell them you can either tell me the truth or lie. It's up to you. You don't have to tell me the truth. You have them do a couple more swaps, and then you tell them to take two of the utensils and put them behind their back in each of their hands. And then you turn around and instantly you can tell them not only what utensil is in each hand, but which is the one that they're focusing on. So it's a very basic way of using the green neck system, but it's really a propless effect, because you don't have to use those utensils. You could perform this on the fly anywhere for anyone. If you have nothing on you and somebody asks you to show them something, you could be like, oh, what do you have in your pockets? You could use their three objects to do the routine. Because once you learn the sequence of what you need to learn, it's so simple. And you probably won't forget it. Like I've never forgotten it. But then again, I've also read his book from cover to cover. So maybe that also helps. But if you practice this for 5 minutes, then you'll be good to go. So that's the second routine he goes over in the lecture. Again, I think most of you will probably use it, because it's like a handy dandy little tool to have in your back pocket, really. The third routine of the lecture, which is the last one that uses the green neck system, is probably my favorite routine on the whole lecture. And the reason is because Gabriel Werlen has elevated the green neck system now to another level with this third routine, which he calls seeing. The routine uses two spectators, although you could perform it just one-on-one if you wanted to, and you're going to use 3 glasses. And you tell the first spectator to imagine they have an imaginary blue ball, and you turn your back and you have them put it under one of the glasses. You have them swap the glasses around, and then you can immediately tell them under what glass it is. And since it's an imaginary ball, it seems utterly impossible to the spectator, because your back is turned while they're swapping the glasses around. How could you know anything? Even if you were watching, you wouldn't even know once the ball is put underneath the glass, because there's nothing to see. And really why I'm telling you that this elevates the green neck system is because after the first person swaps the glasses, you turn around and tell the second person, now here's an imaginary, I don't know, yellow ball. I'll turn around again. You put it under whatever glass you want to, and then the glasses are swapped around again, and then finally you turn around. It seems like there's absolutely no way you could know where both of those imaginary balls are, because the glasses have been swapped so much that, and it's funny because when you watch it, you'll see Gabriel Werlen emphasize that you need to tell that first spectator to keep track of where their ball is, because they might lose track of it themselves if they're not keeping track of it, because we're dealing with imaginary balls, right? So this is why it's such a powerful effect. And I think that anyone who watches this lecture is definitely going to use this routine for sure. I already started road testing it and just getting really strong reactions from it. So the next series of routines, like the rest of the lecture, relies on other principles that he goes over, but the main principle that's present in all of the rest of the routines he goes over in the lecture is something he calls Schrodinger's system. And this principle or idea is based on Schrodinger's cat that you're probably familiar with, the idea in quantum physics of something being in two states at the same time. In the classic Schrodinger's cat, the cat is in a box and you don't know, and it's alive, and it's both alive and dead until you open the box to see if the cat's alive or dead. And so that is the core principle that he's using in the rest of the effects that he goes over in the lecture, where there's multiple realities that are occurring simultaneously until a certain part of the routine where you shut the door on one of those and just build up the one that you want based on what the spectator chooses. And because this isn't dual reality, it's multiple realities. Because of that, once you get to that certain part of the routine where the spectator makes their choice and you close the door on the other possibility, it's almost like you rewrite the history of the effect as they've seen it, just to emphasize the ending that you're choosing, the reality that they chose. So it's almost like, imagine like a river flowing downwards, and then eventually you stop one part of the river, but the rest just flows completely. So the first effect that he goes over is something he calls the colorful opener, I think it was called, or colorful introduction or something like that. And it's based on Max Maven's The Disposable Color, which he published in the Red Book of Mentalism. Now, in the Red Book of Mentalism, Max Maven had this idea called the disposable color, which it was a way of choosing a spectator to come up on stage with you, where you throw a paper ball out in the audience, somebody catches it, you ask them to just think of a color and name it, and if they name the right color, then you can let them open the paper ball and see that you predicted it. So Gabriel Werlen now has taken that idea and really turned it into a mini effect. So this is something that, for those that do a lot of stage or parlor mentalism where you need to choose somebody randomly, you can throw the paper ball out in the audience and somebody will catch it. And what he does is he uses multiple principles, so that way if the person thought of a different color, it will seem like the mentalist knew it, that you knew exactly what color they were going to think of, even if it's not the color that's in the paper ball. Very clever. The principles are really great, and I think that anyone who does like stage mentalism, where you use the same type of idea to get a spectator to come up on stage, I think it's something that you definitely will consider using. So the next couple of effects are based on the witch hand plot. The first one is called The Loser Wins, and it does use the brass coin casket that I reviewed on my channel a couple of years ago. This is made by Airship Magic, and I think they started making these again. So if you're curious about it, you can watch my review here on my channel. But what this allows you to do is it lets the spectator put the coin in here, either heads up or tails up, and then close it, and you're able to know instantly if it's heads up or tails up. And so Gabriel Werlen utilizes this with a witch hand plot, where he has the spectator put it behind their back. First he turns around, he tells them to put the coin in there, heads up or tails up. Then he tells them to put it behind their back and put it in either hand, and then come forward. And then he does a couple of rounds. I think he does either 3 or 4 rounds where he tells them not only which hand it's in, but if the coin is heads up or tails up. Now, he doesn't explain the method that he uses, but he does say that he uses Timon Krause's method from his book, Witch Hand Method in Philosophy, which, again, I also reviewed on this channel, although it probably will be hard to get your hands on that book now. So if you are interested in the witch hand plot, I would recommend you just check out my top 5 reviews that I did, because I did multiple top 5 reviews on the witch hand plot, because it's a plot that I like a lot, because you could do it anytime, anywhere. You don't need anything. You could use any small object, which is why I've studied almost every version that exists out there. So I would refer you guys to check out my top 5 reviews on that. But that's really the first phase of this effect. And then the second phase is really like a prediction phase, because he pulls out a paper that's folded up and he tells the spectator that what's on that paper is their future. And he asks them to hold on to it. And then he says, we have some imaginary coins here. He lets them choose an imaginary coin. He has them put it behind their back. He has them focus on one, change their mind, put it in one hand, focus on that, change your mind, and then bring it out. And not only does he guess where the coin is, but whether or not it's heads up or tails up. And then the person can take out the paper and you can unfold it slowly to show that the prediction matches. Not just the coin they chose, but also which hand they initially focused on, how they switched it, and how the coin ended up in the end. And so he does that whole routine together, and he calls that the loser wins. Following that, he goes into a couple other which hand type effects, but that use a business card. The first one is called proof, and then the second one is called sync. And he performed them back to back. I think you could just do those back to back, because the first routine, which is called proof, very clever. He has a spectator that he's using, and then he has a business card that's folded up, and he has a second spectator that he brings up and tells them that they're going to be the proof. He whispers something to them, then gives the business card to the person who's there and tells them to put it behind their back, put it in whatever hand they want, and come forward. And then he's able to show them that he knew exactly which hand they would put it in. And the person that he whispered to confirms that he told them ahead of time where they were going to put it before they did. And this is all completely self-working. The method is very, very sneaky and very clever. Again, using the same principles of the Schrodinger system. Very, very clever. And then the second effect is called sync, but he performed it like back to back with this one. And I would see how you could easily too, because what he does is he tells the person again to take the business card, put it behind your back, and he emulates what he wants them to do. Then he brings his hands forward and they do, and then he opens up his hand, they open up the same hand, and of course the business card is there. Again, completely self-working, and I could see myself using both of these two effects back to back at any time. Now, I haven't road tested these two yet, but I'm planning to shortly, because it's so simple and so easy, and something you could do completely impromptu. You just have to take out your business card and write something on it. So up until there, those are all of like the which hand type effects that he goes over. The next effect on the lecture is called heritage, and this is Gabriel Werlen's take on the predicted thought of card. We've seen many different versions of this plot, everything from Joshua Jay's Inferno to Sans Mind's Prospect, where you show a card or there's a card in an envelope, the spectator comes up with a card and you've predicted it ahead of time. That is the basic plot. And here Gabriel Werlen has eliminated a lot of the equivoque that we see that's typical with this type of effect. And what I did like about it, and I agree with him, where at one point in the routine he will take out the card and be able to show it to the spectator like this so they could see the back of it before he does the revelation, until that moment where they actually name the card that they're thinking of, and then you can turn it around and show it to them. Now, if you are interested in this effect and you did watch the lecture, you will need a gaff, and you can buy heritage as a standalone item, but I would recommend that you buy a gaff deck that I can recommend to you guys. If you're interested, you can email me, because there's a gaff deck that is sold on Vanishing Ink Magic, which has multiple sets of those cards that you would use to do this type of effect. Now, me personally, I do this type of effect, but without any gaffs, just regular cards, because I want to be able to give it to the spectator and let them take it home with them. You might have actually watched my performance of it, because I did perform it on my video chat show. It was called Your Card in My Pocket, because it's an effect that I really like to perform. And I think even just watching this lecture of Gabriel Werlen has given me some ideas of how I can change my own routine a little bit to eliminate some of the equivoque that I use. But as I mentioned to you guys, I prefer to perform a version that uses no gaff cards, because I want to be able to give it away. And if you do watch my own performance of my effect, I like the idea of the card being in view the whole time, which is why I like the idea of keeping it in my pocket where they can see it the whole time. So that way they don't think that any funny business has occurred. Although I will tell you that the routine that Gabriel Werlen goes over, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's an excellent routine, and I think it's something that you'll probably end up using, which is why I recommend that if you want to pick up the GAF cards, you just email me so I can tell you the GAF pack you should buy for that effect. The last two effects on the lecture are 50-50 effects, and you may be familiar with some other 50-50 effects out there, like for instance, like Ian Rowling. I know he put out a 50-50 type effect, and it's very popular in mentalism. If you've watched any of Darren Brown's shows, it appears that he uses a couple of different types of 50-50 type effects in his shows because it enables you to, play around with the spectator, asking them questions about themselves to be able to get an idea of what they would choose, right? So the first effect is really a close-up type of 50-50 effect, which is called heads I win, tails you lose, where you're going to have a business card with something written on it, and you're going to ask the spectator if they've ever played heads or tails, which they're going to say, yeah. You have them choose heads or tails, and of course, you win, they lose, right? Kind of thing. That's what it is. And the reason why it's so powerful is because the spectator really doesn't understand the rules of the game until they've made a choice. That's really why. They don't really understand what exactly it is that you are, what is the prediction really predicting? They don't really get that until after they've made their choice, which is what makes it so strong. Again, based on Schrodinger's system. And then finally, the last effect on the lecture, which is the consolation prize, is a stage version of the 50-50 effect where the mentalist has a spectator choose either blue or red. And again, because of the clever scripting, the spectator doesn't realize really what it is that they're being asked until after they've already answered the question. That's really what makes it so strong. And it's really clever, the scripting, because in one part you'll see where he says, I don't want any kind of ambiguity. I want this to be crystal clear. And really, there's tons of ambiguity there, which is what makes it so hilarious. But it's really clever. The ending is, the kicker ending is awesome as well. I think that you guys are going to really like it a lot. And anyone who's into like stage magic, I think it's an effect that they would consider putting into their act because it's so simple to perform, yet it seems so impossible. So those are all the effects on this lecture, and you can see that every single thing on this lecture is really useful one way or another. I personally cannot really say anything negative about the lecture. I thought the entire lecture was really incredible. I thought all the material was very strong, useful. All the principles in psychology is excellent. And I would highly recommend this lecture to anyone who's into mentalism. Anyway, as usual, if you guys have any questions or comments, just leave them for me below. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next review.